Hi guys, recording this for concept I, so exponential and logarithmic functions. So the first directions say rewrite as a fraction or integer without exponents. So lots of exponents I'm seeing here, trying to get rid of them. It says if a fraction, do not convert to a mixed number. So I don't want to write anything that's like 3.5 like that. I would want to write that as 7/2 instead, because it says leave as a proper or improper fraction. So we're going to write them as fractions. Cool. So choose 7 of these first ones. So you have some notes on the side here in blue if you want to check those out. But basically, like if we have a negative exponent, it moves to the bottom. So any number would move to the bottom. And then if it's already on the bottom, it moves to the top. And then if we have a negative exponent with a fraction, it distributes onto both of them, which basically moves that the y one is moving to the top and the x is moving to the bottom. So our general like exponent rules to remember. So for number 1, I see that this is 7 to the 1 or to the -1 power, so it's going to be moving to the bottom of a fraction. 7 to the 1 is just 7, and then we'll leave that 1 on top. So that's going to be your answer for A. For B, like this would be like 1/6 squared when we move it to the bottom, and 6 squared, of course, is 36. So that's how those would be. That would be like how C and D are. For E, we see a negative exponent, so it's going to be moving to the top. So 4 to the 1 at the top, which would be the same as 4. So that would be our answer for E. Similar to F and H. G, similar to A and B. And then for I, we would have this -2 would distribute on here and on here. So I would have 2 to the -2 over 3 to the -2. 3 needs to move to the top. So I would have 3 squared is 9 over 2 to the 2 would move to the bottom. So this would be 4. 9/4 would be your answer for I. In a negative situation, you can just flip it right off the bat. So you could say this is really like 3/2 squared, right? So dealing with that negative by flipping it. And then you would say same thing, 9/4. So your answer is that for I. So that's sort of like the first part of part 1. And then the second part of part 1 is asking about more of these like fractions. So I will do K and U. Yeah, I think that's good. K and U. So for K, I would just go ahead and turn the whole number into the fraction with a denominator that's the same as the fraction before, so we can have the common denominators. So I know the whole number 2 would be the same as like times 4/4, so that'd be 8/4. So 1/4 minus 8/4, that would be -7/4. And that's how we're gonna leave it with our improper fraction. For U, I'm going to turn the negative exponent into a fraction. So 1/2 to the 3rd, which is 8. 1/8 plus 5. So since I want that to be in eighths, multiply by 8/8, which is the same as multiply by 1, but changing what it looks like. So 1/8 plus 48 would be 41/8. So that's going to be their answer for U. That is number 1 in a nutshell. For number 2, we are again simplifying. So we're choosing 7 of these problems. EE and JJ very similar to problems we did already. Let's go ahead and do DD. It says write a radical for DD. So since this is a negative, I know it's going to be on the bottom. So 1 like this. And then they want us to write it with a radical. So remember that the bottom number becomes the index. So in this case, index 2. So anything to the 1/2 power, remember, is like the square root. So this would be how we're going to go ahead and write that. We don't need to rationalize that. Normally we would, but since this is, I mean, you could write it as like square root of 3 or square root of E. So it'd be like square root of E over E. You could write it either way. I'd say the first way is a little bit more simple and is what they're asking for here. So both of those would be correct. Let's go ahead and do maybe this one as well. So remember, this guy for HH is going to distribute onto both of them. So -1 to the 1/3 power over 1,000 to the 1/3 power. So remember 1/3 is like taking the cube root of that number and the cube root of this number. So the cube root of -1 is just -1 over the cube root of 1,000 is 10. So because 10 times 10 times 10 would be 1,000. So that would be your answer for HH. So that's sort of what's happening there in number 2. And then in number 3, you have 2 examples here. So we're going to be doing some logs without our calculators. So they're asking us to switch the format. So basically they're saying like 10 to the power of what gives us 1,000. So mentally we're switching forms and asking ourselves like the base 10 to the power of what is going to give you 1,000. We'd say, oh, 3, because 10 to the 3 is 1,000. So your answer, this whole thing, simplifies into the answer 3. If you were to type it in your calculator, you would get 3 as your answer. The same is true for ln. Remember, it has a base of e. So e to the power of what gives me this. So e to the power of what gives me 1 over e squared. So in order to be 2, I would need 2. And in order to move to the bottom, I would need a negative. So your answer here would be -2. E to the -2 power would give you that there. So for these ones, you're going to choose 20. I know there's a lot. You can choose whichever ones you want. But let's say, so maybe I'll do C just to start. So 3 to the power of what gives me 81? That'd be 3 to the 4th. So your answer is 4. Similar for F, this would be like 100 to the power of what gives me 10. So I know that that has to be a fraction because it's getting smaller. So it would be 100 to the power of 1/2. Because remember that half power is a square root. Right? So maybe like this one here, this is E. Remember base ln is E. E to the power of what gives me the square root of E? That would again be 1/2 because the square root means 1/2 power. So if I'm looking at H, this would be like 2 to the power of what gives me -1. So I'm thinking like 2 to the power of 0 would give me 1, 2 to the power of 1 would give me 2, 2 to the power of -1 would give me negative, or give me 1/2. But there's not really anything I can do in order to get to the negative powers. You can't do the log of a negative power. So this one's called does not exist, which we abbreviate to DN. Like that. So that is that one. We can do one of these cube root ones. So like 8 to the power of what gives me a cube root, right? So remember that that's our 1/3 power, right? 1/3 power. 7 to the power of what gives me 7 to the 100, right? Well, obviously 100, right? 7 to the 100 is 7 to the 100. So 100 is our answer. This is like similar, right? E to the what gives me e to the 1. I think some of those, I think those are pretty good answers. Let's look at maybe this one that says careful. So 1/8 to the power of what gives me 1/2. So I know that has to get like bigger, right? So I know that I would need to, if I square this, so I'm just gonna do some understanding here. So squaring this would give me 1 over 64. That's going the wrong direction. So, and if I put like a negative here, let's do like -2, that would be positive 64, like way too big. So I need something between +2 and -2, something like 0 gives me 1. So I know that it's like in that fraction phrase. And I know that 8 is the cube of 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is 1/8 to the power of 1/3 would give me 1/2. So I'm going to say, okay, 1/8 to the power of 1/3 would give me 1 to the 1/3, and then 8 to the 1/3 would be 2. And I see that's 1/2. So I know the answer here is 1/3. Cool. Let me know which ones you have questions. I'll see you in Zoom. Bye.